in the scopes, première condense. While Tangtang manipulates plants, we crushed thugs along our way. From fleeing the wasteland to dominating the black market. Just when survival was no longer an issue, a global deep freeze storm pushed us, apéroptopti partenaire, into an even deeper mystery. 5 p.m. The world outside the window had twisted into a melting oil painting. The mercury in the thermometer was dead stuck at the 58 degrees Celsius mark. The curtains of our rented room were drawn tight. But 3 layers of blackout cloth couldn't block out the roasting, radiant heat. The air was filled with a stench of burning rubber mixed with rotting garbage. That was the unique scent of the apocalypse. Tangtang was lying on the floor, like a dying fish. Her originally fair face was now as red as a ripe tomato. Her lips were dry, cracked, and peeling. The blood that seeped out was instantly dried by the high heat, forming dark red scabs. She clutched a dried soybean tightly in her hand. Her only desperate hope. Ming Ming. Water. Tangtang's voice was so weak it was barely audible. I held our last bottle of mineral water, the plastic already deformed from my grip. I glanced at the bottom. There was probably less than 50 milliliters left. I unscrewed the cap and carefully poured the water into it, bringing it to Tangtang's lips. Tangtang struggled to lift her head, staring at those few drops. Her throat swallowed instinctively. But she pushed my hand away, pointing at my own cracked lips. Right at that moment, I felt the jade bracelet on my wrist turn scalding hot. This was a fake jade bracelet I bought for $20 at a street. It was entirely emerald green, but now it seemed to come alive, biting tightly into my wrist bone. A burning sensation surged up my veins to my heart. Subconsciously, I tried to shake it off, but accidentally scratched my finger on a nearby wire. A drop of blood oozed out and fell onto the bracelet. No explosion. No lunoise. I only felt a buzzing in my mind. And my consciousness was pulled by a massive force, instantly plunging into a world of ice and snow. It was a vast, blank space. In the center floated a giant ice crystal throne. Every breath I exhaled instantly condensed into ice crystals. That scorching, thirsty feeling was swept entirely away. In reality, my eyes snapped open. Pupils turned a pure ice blue in that instant. I looked at Tangtang, focused my mind. There was no water source in the air. But, in the palm of my hand, a crystal clear block of ice formed out of nowhere. It wasn't ice made from ordinary water, but mystic jade. Eat this, quickly. I shoved the ice cube into Tangtang's mouth. Tangtang took a subconscious bite. With a crisp crunch, the ice melted in her mouth, turning into a cool stream, sliding down her throat. instantly suppressing the heat toxin inside her. Tangtang's eyes lit up immediately. She grabbed my hand greedily. Wanting more. Don't rush. Watching, Tangtang regain some color in her face. I felt relieved. Right at that moment, I noticed the dried soybean in her hand was moving. The shriveled bean seemed to have absorbed the moisture. And with a sudden pop, it expanded instantly, turning into a fist-sized, dark green iron bean. It slammed heavily onto the floor, cracking the tile. Tangtang jumped in shock, then looked at the bean in her hand with surprise. What's going on? It looks like we've both been chosen. I took a deep breath. The icy blue in my eyes slowly fading away, replaced by an unprecedented calmness. I have ice, you have beans. In this world, we won't die easily anymore. Juste then, someone started pounding heavily on the door. I stood up and walked to the door. Through the door panel, I could even hear heavy breathing outside, and the sound of gasoline being splashed. I glanced at Tangtang. Tangtang tightly gripped the iron bean, her eyes becoming resolute. Open the door. I know you're in there. Hand over the water, or I'll set this door on fire. Just as the lighter sparked outside, I violently yanked the door open. The burly man outside was startled, nearly dropping his lighter. He looked at the girl standing before him, who was usually so meek. On se nirait. Oh. Figured it out, little sister. Hand over the wa. Before he could finish his sentence, I raised my hand, aiming my palm at the ground beneath his feet. A piercing chill surged outward. Within a 2-meter radius centered on the man, the floor was instantly covered in thick frost. The gasoline he had just poured out, before it could even be ignited, was frozen solid in a flash. What the hell? The burly man slipped, falling heavily to the ground, his machete sliding far away. I shouted coldly, Tangtang, do it. Tangtang darted out from behind the door. With a flick of her wrist, she scattered those iron beans like marbles, throwing them right onto the man. Thump, thump, thump. Instantly, they expanded into millstone-sized, dark green, solid spheres, pinning the burly man dead to the ground, unable to move an inch. His eyes widened in terror, his hands desperately grabbing the wooden sphere on his neck. He felt as if the sphere had a life of its own, sucking away his body heat. That chilling cold and suffocation nearly drove him mad. Your water and canned food belong to us. The car keys are ours too. I crouched down, looking down at him from above. The burly man nodded frantically, his eyes filled with terror and a trace of relief at surviving the ordeal. 10 minutes later, carrying heavy backpacks, we drove the man's off-road vehicle, quietly, leaving that hellish apartment building behind. In the rearview mirror, the dilapidated building looked like it was about to collapse under the blazing sun. Ming, where are we going? Tangtang asked, looking out at the distorted heat waves. To the West Mountain Villa. There is an independent water reservoir there and a solar power system. Most importantly, it's on high ground. Easy to defend and hard to attack. I gripped the steering wheel, my gaze determined. As the car drove along the abandoned highway, a low growl suddenly came from ahead. A giant black beetle, the size of a cat, darted out from the ruins by the roadside, lunging straight at the windshield. The beetle was covered entirely in a black carapace, spitting corrosive acid from its mandibles. Watch out! I swerved the steering wheel sharply, raising my hand at the same time, aiming my palm at the beetle. Freeze! A visible blast of frost erupted from my palm, instantly encasing half of the beetle's body. Its movements stiffened immediately, its wings frozen into an ice sculpture. But its vitality was incredibly stubborn. The unfrozen half was still struggling wildly. It opened its mouth, spraying a glob of green acid at us. With swift reflexes, Tangtang hurled a handful of iron beans at the beetle. The iron beans expanded midair, transforming into several millstone-sized, solid spheres. With a howling wind, they smashed ruthlessly into the beetle, pinning it firmly against the guardrail by the road. The beetle twitched violently a few times, before finally stopping. That was close. It seems this apocalypse isn't just about extreme heat. The speed of biological mutation is faster than we imagined. We continued our drive toward the West Mountain Villa. The sun was setting, dyeing the sky a bloody red, as if foretelling that an even greater storm was coming. When we finally arrived at the West Mountain Villa, we found the gates tightly locked, the electronic lock flashing a red warning light. Première walked, placed my hand on the lock, and a chill instantly seeped into the circuit board, freezing the chips inside to dust. With a click, the gate slowly opened. The villa's interior was luxurious, but empty, due to a tower and water. All the plants had withered and died. The air was filled with a musty smell. Tangtang walked in, looking at the room full of dead branches, and said with heartache, "What a pity. If only these flowers could come back to life." I walked over to the water reservoir and reached my hand in. Clear water began to surge into the pool. As long as I'm here, this place will soon become an oasis. I looked at Tangtang and smiled slightly. Tangtang nodded, took out a handful of seeds from her backpack, and scattered them in the backyard flower bed. She closed her eyes, feeling the power within her. Those seeds seemed to hear a summon, instantly breaking out of the soil, and growing tender green shoots. However, just as we were about to settle down, the villa's alarm system suddenly went off again. I rushed to the monitoring room and saw the screen displaying dozens of dark figures around the villa, rapidly approaching our perimeter. It's the Fire-Tooth Gang, looking at the people on the screen. My expression grew solemn. How did they find this place? I don't care who they are. If they dare to rob our home, we'll make sure they never return. Tangtang clenched her fists. I took a deep breath, a cold light flashing in my eyes. Prepare for battle. The Fire-Tooth Gang's assault was fiercer than we imagined. They drove our vehicle, mounted with flamethrowers, madly sweeping fire across the villa. I stood on the second floor balcony, pressing my hands against the railing. A freezing chill rapidly spread along it, forming a thick wall of ice all around the villa. The flames crashed against the ice wall, hissing loudly, as they instantly turned into clouds of steam. Seeing this, the Fire-Tooth Gang became even more frenzied. They pulled out liquid nitrogen guns, trying to freeze and crack the ice wall. Première snirade. Focusing my mind, countless ice spikes suddenly grew from within the ice wall, shooting out like machine gun fire at the Fire-Tooth Gang. The gang members fell down screaming, their fate unknown. Right at that moment, Tangtang charged out from the backyard, gripping a handful of iron beans. She hurled them violently into the air. Those beans rapidly grew in the wind, instantly transforming into millstone-sized, dark green, solid spheres. With a whistling sound, they smashed brutally into the gang's vehicles. The heavy wooden spheres crushed the off-road cars, leaving them dented and deformed. The massive impact left the thugs inside, completely dazed and disoriented. Let's see, you try to bully us now. Tangtang laughed out loud. With another flick of her wrist, several more iron beans flew out, landing accurately on the roof of the gang leader's car. Seeing the situation, the Fire-Tooth Gang's leader knew that the battle was lost, and hurriedly fled with the remaining men. Over the next few days, Tangtang and I began renovating the villa. Using my abilities, I built a 5-meter-high wall of ice around the perimeter. Inside the wall, I set up countless ice spikes, ready to be launched at any moment. Tangtang planted all sorts of mutated plants in the backyard. There were man-eating flowers that shot toxic needles, fruit trees that bore delicious fruits, and catapulting bean pods specifically for defense. Over, our supplies were soon exhausted. Première frenade. We need to go out and find food. Tangtang nodded. I heard there's a black market at the abandoned factory. They have everything there. Tangtang and I found a corner and set up our stall. On the stall lay a few servings of ice slushies, flavored with mutated mint leaves, along with some mutated fruits. Tangtang had grown. I called out, coldly, a moment of cool refreshment. Fair prices for all. Very soon, our stall was surrounded by people. Those who had been running around all day, in the hot sun, stared wide-eyed at the steaming, icy slushies. Their eyes were practically glued to them. I'll take one. I want one too. How much? One slushie, for half a bag of rice. One fruit, for 2 cans of food. Everyone traded in an orderly manner. And the scene was very peaceful. Suddenly, a skinny guy grabbed a bowl of slushie in the chaos and ran. Tangtang was anxious to chase him, but I held her back. I gently raised my hand, using my power. The ground instantly formed a thin layer of ice. The skinny guy slipped, falling flat on his back, spilling the slushie all over the floor. He looked deeply embarrassed. Première volée d'eau, and said calmly, "If you want it, you can trade, you can't just steal." He apologized profusely, pulling out his biscuits to compensate. I waved my hand dismissively. "Don't do it again." Everyone around witnessed this scene. They not only admired my abilities, but also appreciated my leniency. After that, no one dared to cause trouble. Our stall became the most reliable one in the black market. And we gradually gained a solid foothold here. One day, a man walked over. He looked at Tangtang and me, smiling slightly. "Levi, your powers are very strong. Are you interested in joining us?" I looked at the man, a trace of vigilance flashing in my eyes. "Who are you?" "I am Mal Bufin, leader of the Doomsday Squad. We possess the most advanced tech and the strongest team. If we join forces, we can definitely rule this apocalypse." Tangtang and I exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of hesitation in each other's eyes. I replied, "We need time to consider." "No problème. I await your good news." Mao Bufin smiled faintly, turned around, and left. I frowned as I watched his retreating figure. Taking a deep breath, I said, "This guy is not simple. No matter who he is, we cannot trust him easily. We must improve our strength as fast as possible to survive in this apocalyptic world." After returning to the villa, Tangtang and I began studying our abilities deeply. I discovered my power wasn't just creating ice, but controlling temperature entirely. I could drop the temperature down to absolute 0, or raise it to thousands of degrees. Tangtang discovered that her power wasn't limited to controlling plants. She could even control animals. Our strength grew continuously, and the villa became more like a true fortress. However, our peaceful life didn't last long. On night, the Doomsday Squad suddenly surrounded our villa. Mao Bufin stood at the front of his team, looking at Tangtang and me. "Ladies, have you thought it over? Are you willing to join us?" I stared back at Mao Bufin and said coldly, "We've decided. We won't join you." "Then don't blame me for being ruthless." With a wave of his hand, his squad immediately opened fire. Countless missiles flew towards the villa. I I pressed my hands against the ground, and a freezing aura instantly spread out, turning the missiles into ice sculptures and deflecting them right back. The missiles exploded among his squad. Seeing this, Mao Bufen's face darkened significantly. He took out a potion and chugged it down. His body began to expand, his muscles becoming as hard as stone. I'll show you what true power is. Mao Bufen roared furiously, charging straight at Tangtang and me. Tangtang and I looked at each other, activating our powers simultaneously. I dropped the temperature to absolute 0. Mao Bufen's body was instantly frozen solid into a statue. Meanwhile, Tangtang scattered a handful of iron beans into the air. They rapidly expanded, turning into massive, thick wooden spikes that tightly bound the ice statue. With a violent pull, she slammed him down onto the ground. Ah, Mao Bufen screamed miserably, lying defeated on the floor, unable to move at all. You've lost, I looked at Mao Bufen and declared coldly. No, Mao Bufen roared in anger. I haven't lost. I still have one last trump card. He let out a sharp whistle. Boom. With a massive explosion, the ice walls surrounding the villa suddenly blew apart. Countless mutated creatures charged out from the rubble, lunging viciously at Tangtang and me. Mao Bufen laughed maniacally. These mutated beasts, they will devour you alive. Tangtang and I simply watched the beasts, a cold glint flashing in our eyes. Did you think these monsters could defeat us? How naive, I said indifferently. Saying so, I pressed my hands to the ground. A massive blast of cold swept out, instantly freezing all those mutated beasts into solid ice statues in midair. Tangtang threw another handful of iron beans. They instantly expanded, transforming into giant wooden vines that wrapped tightly around the frozen beasts. With a forceful pull, the ice statues were shattered into pieces. No. Mao Bufen stared at his annihilated beast army, his eyes filled with absolute despair. This is impossible. I looked down at him and declared coldly, your era is over. Our era has just begun. Tangtang and I stood on the balcony of our villa, watching the setting sun in the distance, our hearts full of hope. Ming, what do we do next? Tangtang asked softly. We are going to build a home of our own. Première locataire. And smiled gently. A home with no hunger, no blazing heat, and no wars. That sounds wonderful. Let's give this home a name, then. Let's call it Frost Sanctuary. From then on, Tangtang and I used our powers to provide food and water for the people struggling in the apocalypse. We also offered them a safe refuge. Over, just as our sanctuary was growing ever stronger, the color of the sky abruptly changed. The once blood-red sky began to turn ash-gray. Fierce winds howled, and the temperature plummeted. Ming Ming. Look, I raised my head. Only to see snowflakes drifting down from the sky. The snow grew heavier. On the danse, soon covering the entire earth. Tea. Snow. Tangtang reached out her hand to catch a flake. It melted in her palm. A new era has begun.